I kind of look like I'm in like an 80s punk rock band, and I'm kind of about it. Hey class, welcome back, and today we're actually going to be learning about CRAAP. No, literally. CRAAP. And what that is a acronym that is an easy way for you to analyze sources and can help you to navigate the information that we constantly see. On Tuesday, we were reviewing the differences between primary and secondary sources. Primary sources look at the event from the perspective of somebody who was there to experience the event. Another way to look at it is that a primary resource is an artifact left behind by somebody who experienced it. An example of it would be a photograph, a diary entry, a letter. Secondary resources are interpretations of the event, and that is from somebody who was not there. What a secondary source does is that it analyzes the primary resources to create an argument. And some examples of that would be things like books or documentaries or news articles. So here's the deal. You are only as informed as the information that you have. And sometimes we have the ability to get primary resources, especially when it comes to like modern news. Like if you're reading an article about what's going on with COVID-19, you might turn on a newscasting of President Trump talking about some of the changes that are happening in the country. That is a primary source because he is living through his experience as the president during this pandemic. Sometimes only secondary resources are available to us, especially when you're looking at like history way back when. There are moments in history where like the only thing that we have is stories. When I was in college, I took a whole class on the Crusades, and most of the Crusade stories that we hear about comes from secondary sources. People who might have heard somebody who experienced what it was like to live through the Crusades, but they weren't there to experience it. And sometimes even historians have to only look at secondary sources because it's the only thing that we have. Now, I keep using historical research as an example, but looking at and analyzing sources is not just something that you have to do in history. It is something that you will have to do your entire life. It is used to help analyze everyday information. Things like tweets, news stories, Facebook posts, Instagram articles, even Snapchat started that newish feature, although I wouldn't consider it new anymore, but they had those stories, Snapchat stories. You are looking at information. And the same thing that you do to analyze that information is what historians use to analyze historical information. So this is where CRAAP comes in. CRAAP is a simple 5-step process to analyze primary sources. And what we're going to be using as an example today is news stories, because I think news stories are the most common type of resource that is shared throughout the World Wide Web. So the first part of the CRAAP acronym, C, stands for currency. And what that's asking is if the information is current to the topic. When was it written? And how does it compare to the information that they're sharing? If you're looking at the COVID-19 pandemic, you might study a source that was posted by the CDC back in January, when we first kind of heard about the possibility of a pandemic occurring. And that would be okay information if you're looking at the beginnings of the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you want to look at the information available about April, almost May, then you cannot look at the January information. You have to look for updated information. And that's where you can go on the CDC website and you can see like current information about how many people have been tested positive, how many people have been hospitalized, etc., etc. The next part of the CRAAP acronym is reliability. Where did the author get this information? Are there links or citations available? Can you do further research to help you kind of get a bigger idea of the resource? Can the information that's available on the website be verified by checking other sites? Is the information that you read and learn about on that specific source available elsewhere? Because if it isn't, that means that it's less reliable and you probably should look elsewhere for the information. Now we're going to look at the authority of the author. That's the A, the first A in CRAAP. And it's going to ask you whether or not you trust the author. And you can kind of figure that out by whether or not the author's name is even listed in the article. Does the author have some type of degree? Sometimes if you look on websites and you scroll on the bottom, you'll see like a little blurb about the author. That's going to help you to kind of determine that. Do they have a degree in what they're talking about? If they are discussing ways to stop the spread of COVID-19, are they a doctor? Do they have a medical degree? Do they have any type of biological background? Because that's going to help you to determine whether or not they even have the knowledge to spread that information, and is that knowledge accurate. And the next A is authority, but instead of the authority of the author, it's the authority of the organization or the site that it's being published on. If I'm writing for the New York Times, you have to look at the reliability of the New York Times organization, which for the most part is a pretty reliable source. The New York Times has been a United States newspaper since the Civil War, so most people kind of consider it as a pretty reliable source. But if I am posting at a website called like thetruthof911.com and it was created earlier this year, The Truth of 9/11, which I'm not even sure is a real website, is not a reliable source. Historians, sociologists, experts in the field do not check thetruthof911.com to get their information. So that's what I mean by authority of the organization. And if you're curious about whether or not an organization is authoritative, if they are trustworthy, you can Google them. Sometimes, depending on the organization, there's about me sections or about the organization sections somewhere on the page. Another easy way to kind of think about whether or not an organization is reliable is what kind of domain they use. And if you don't know what a domain is what the end of a URL looks like. So when you go to Google Classrooms, it is classrooms.google.com. The .com part of Google Classrooms is the domain. And most of the time, .coms and .nets are a little less reliable. And I'm not saying you should never trust .coms and .net websites, but if you're really digging in for like accurate information, you want to try to get to domains such as .gov, .edu, .org. Those sites tend to be a little bit more reliable. Now, the last part of CRAAP is purpose. Does the author address multiple perspectives, or are they trying to get you to believe one way or another? If you go to InfoWars, for example, is run by a very conservative organization. And a lot of the news articles that they write is trying to get you to support the conservative train of thought and not the more liberal train of thought when it comes to American politics. And there are websites that do the opposite. CNN, for example, is very biased toward the liberal train of thought and not so much of the conservative train of thought. And the list goes on and on. If you're reading the article and the article is just listing facts, that's really what you want. You don't want them to tell you how to think, you just want them to give you information. And if they favor one perspective over another, you know that you need to probably look into finding more sources to compare to it. So today's assignment is actually going to be very simple. Originally, I had planned to just kind of let you choose your own source, like use Google News and find an article and then just use the CRAAP method to kind of analyze it. But it would be very difficult to do it through Google Classrooms and when I'm not there with you. So instead, I just kind of created a quick quiz. And part of this quiz is first off to kind of get you to think about like your history of sources and reading sources online and sort of your beliefs with reliability and if you ever think about checking them, that kind of thing. And then I'm also curious to see like what you guys think about how important looking at credibility is when it comes to just the education system. Do you think that your school, Holmes High School, is doing a really good job of doing that? Or would you wish that I talked more about how to analyze resources? Regardless, I hope that me kind of walking through the CRAAP method has maybe given you some ideas. And even if you're not necessarily using it for the assignment for today, I hope that you take that information and you continue to use it moving forward. I don't see you having any issues because I've kind of decided instead of having Google Docs, I feel like Google Docs has been my issue. I keep saying it's Google Classrooms, I think it's Google Docs. So instead of having you guys get Google Docs, I'm going to try to move all of the work into Google Forms because I feel like Forms is just much easier for me to follow along and it doesn't seem as confusing to you. So I'm going to have that forms posted today. I'm also going to make all of the assignments going forward, as many as I can at least, into Google Forms. I just seem to have less problems with it. So if you do have problems with it though, please let me know. I have been pretty blown away by the amount of emails I've been getting, and it's a good thing. I'm not complaining. But people have been messaging me and letting me know like you're having issues with one thing or another, and I'm trying to work my best. As you know, this is unprecedented. I didn't go to college and have a class over how to teach online learning. So this is new to me as it is for you. So if you have any issues or you wish I did something differently, please let me know. I will listen. I love getting communication. I'm alone. So any kind of messages are welcome. With that being said, I will see you back here on Tuesday, and I hope that you continue to be safe, sound, and healthy. See you then.